Hello, everyone. I want to thank ASBCI today for having me to give a talk about the current state of affairs on AI and its potential to tackle one of the most talked about industry issues, sizing and fit. My name is Jason Wang, and I'm one of the co-founders of Alvanon. We are a body technology company that helps retailers and brands build better and more consistent sizing for their products. Last year, I gave a talk about something similar, and while I think there's been a lot of new AI tools that have been announced since, we as an industry are still pretty much looking at the same things. The main difference today from a year ago is that a lot more people have actually tried using different AI tools, so I think there's a more common understanding of what it can and cannot do. I also think that while the AI hype is still very strong, there's a lot more healthy skepticism towards it. Before we begin, we need to understand the difference between generative AI and traditional AI. The AI hype today is primarily focused on generative AI, like ChatGPT or Stable Diffusion, which use large mind datasets that allow the AI to identify patterns and then create new variations based on those patterns. In short, it's trying to mimic the human brain, and it's a creative AI. Then there's traditional AI, which is the boring type that's programmed with specific rules and algorithms. They are not creative and are used where creativity is generally not appreciated. So, how can AI be leveraged today in fashion? Let's start with generative AI, with the likes of Stable Diffusion, Midjourney, and Adobe Firefly, where you can use text prompts or image inputs to generate new images. These technologies are getting more and more mature, and as you can see here, they generate useful sketches and images that you would think a designer created. However, to use it effectively, you need to be able to control the tool a little, to limit the creativity of that AI. Like in this example, if we wanted to tell the AI to create a similar jacket with different fabrics, colors, we would need to restrict the underlying body and the general silhouette of the garment, so the AI will only generate garments that look and fit similarly. Generative AI tools like these can be used for ideation, creating design boards for new collections, creating initial templates for design sketches, or simply providing inspiration for new designs. So there's definitely some potential here. Because after all, brands are not creating that many unique designs every season. 99% of new collections are iterations of previous ones, with a twist here and there. And this is what generative AI is all about. Taking what is already available, mashing it together, and then generating something quote-unquote new. And if you think about it, not that dissimilar from what we humans do today. But to go even further, the natural extension to image generation is video generation. And because short videos are far more important than still images to our younger generations, tools like OpenAI Sora, or in this case, Clay, is really starting to produce some crazy results. Imagine being able to leverage AI to help you quickly create shorts of your newest collection in action. We used a mannequin avatar, and it looks pretty authentic, right? I mean, we can even have lip syncing right now. Honestly, it's pretty amazing. I guess it ain't over till the fat lady sings. Okay, terrible jokes aside, we can all agree that AI is indeed very powerful and can produce very believable imagery. But when does this go overboard? Recently, we looked at some new of these virtual try-on AI tools available in the market. This one here is from Colors, and it allows a user to upload a picture of themselves and then swap the garment they are wearing with the garment that is being sold, so the user can see how this garment looks on them. And it looks great. But if you look closely, there's some major red flags here. First, the AI has decided to change the color shade of this top slightly. So it looks similar, but it's not the same thing anymore. And secondly, the AI assumed how this top will fit on this user. But will it actually fit like this? For some users, sure thing. For some users, no. And this is where being overly believable becomes very dangerous. This tool may be providing misconceptions to the user, making them believe that this top is going to fit very well on them. And while this may increase sales of the garment, it will certainly also increase returns and complaints about fit and sizing. I also wonder in the back of my mind if it's actually legal to sell something that is imagined by AI rather than a real representation of the product. And finally, for those who's wondering about generative AI in 3D, our team has been experimenting with many tools on GitHub, and frankly, generative AI for 3D is still in the very early stages. As you can see here, clearly there needs to be much more computing power and readily available assets to move this along. But it's something to worth keep an eye on. So I think it's a good time now to revisit the definition of generative AI and traditional AI. Generative AI is good at being creative, and therefore is very good in areas where there are few requirements and specifications. Users will still need to learn how to control the AI so it knows how to stay inside its lane. And generally, it's useful today for ideation and will continue to get better. Traditional AI, on the other hand, is less glitzy and doesn't make the headlines, but is in fact far more relevant and important in our industry. And why? Because fundamentally, the apparel industry is a numbers and specs industry. At the moment at least, we still manufacture physical goods that have to meet certain criteria in order to be sold. And one of these criteria is sizing. Sizing is a science. It's about numbers and equations. But in large parts of the apparel industry, even today, it's being treated like it's an art form. Designers and technicians don't agree on sizing and which model to use for fitting. Technicians still rely on fit models to determine what their core size is, and they use equations from the 80s to linearly grade their garments. But I think actually all of this is okay if they made sure to stick to those core sizes and grade rules 100% of the time. But they don't. So the result is different garment categories and even SKUs end up being sized inconsistently, leading to confusion internally and externally, and ultimately returns and dissatisfaction from consumers. But this is something we as Alvanon, we've been preaching for 25 years now. But I guess some things are very hard to change. The culprit behind this is a lack of sizing standards and good SOPs in the product development process, mandating the use of those sizing standards. A sizing standard, very simply, is a size range of bodies that each and every one of your garments are built to fit off. This ensures that a size 10 dress, a size 10 jacket, and a size 10 pair of pants are built to fit on the same size 10 body. And while this sounds extremely elementary, it is still far from the norm in our industry. Brands can have multiple sizing standards for different regions that they sell in, or different size categories, or even different target audiences. What is important here is that every garment produced is based on one of these sizing standards. And the reason is because it provides a baseline control for evaluating and improving sizing in the future. Do you guys remember back in the day when you were in school and you did science experiments in chemistry classes? The one thing every experiment needed was a control. The control was the ground truth that you were going to compare your experiment results to. The control was absolute. It needed to be rock solid. That is sizing. Sizing for your brand is your control. It's not a variable where you can decide to change it a little here today and fudge it there a little bit tomorrow. It needs to be constant. It needs to be reliable. And without this, you can try to implement all the tools and tech you want. It won't work. In fact, here's an example. In 2019, the industry was tackling a huge issue where 53% of all online returns were due to sizing and fit. So, in response to this oversized returns problem, brands started adopting a whole host of new tools, like reviews with fit questions or inclusive imagery on different models to illustrate fit. And more prominently, size predictors and virtual try-ons to try to guide consumers to buy the right size and hopefully return less. Literally billions of dollars was spent on these initiatives. And while I think the intention was good, the result leaves much to be desired. Because in 2024 today, we are sitting at 58% of returns due to size and fit. So we have officially regressed. And the reason why? Because we were trying to solve a fundamental issue with Band-Aids. And we were hoping that some AI can miraculously resolve an underlying sizing inconsistency problem. But you know what the worst part about all of this is? It's that almost none of this data collected through these surveys or these sizing predictors are actually actionable because there isn't a control to compare them to. Like this example shown here, even if we got some responses saying this item was too big, what can we do about this data? It's practically useless since it's about a single product that may or may not be sized consistently and therefore can't guide us to improvements in our sizing as a whole. So what can we do as an industry to truly tackle the sizing issue moving forward? I think firstly is to treat sizing with some respect. After all, sizing inadequacies contribute hugely to returns and unsold inventory. It's an elephant in the room no one ever seems to want to address properly. Sizing is not only the technicians, pattern makers, or vendors' problem. It's the whole company's problem, which requires a much more wholesome strategy. A few years ago, we started talking about the sizing ecosystem, which is one way to build a sustainable and constantly improving sizing strategy within any organization. It's fairly straightforward and logical. Start by locking down sizing standards and SOPs to ensure all garments are sized consistently. This is the control. Then implement tools like size predictors and other fit technologies that can guide consumers to the right size while capturing their body shape data. Then finally, analyze and map all of these consumer body shape data back to the control or sizing standards in order to make objective observations and adjustments that will improve your sizing as a whole. So let me elaborate on this a little bit. Start from the beginning. Determining what your sizing standard is going to be. That sizing standard could be a regional one based on data, or it could be based on a fit model. The key here is to understand that the goal is not to create the most accurate sizing standards for your customers. It is to create a control. Then evaluate the grading and sizing charts to ensure that they all map to the sizing standards. Then implement SOPs to mandate the use of these sizing standards down to the vendor level. And determine the season when garments using this new standard hits the shelves. In the meantime, evaluate or implement tools that aim to capture feedback, or best, actual body shape data of the customer. There are many of these tools in the market today, and some, in my opinion, are more useful than others for a sizing ecosystem. But the key thing to make sure is that the tool is fully scalable to most, if not all, of the product offerings on your online store. And that we can extract actual body data from these tools. As an example, a tool that we are launching next year is the MyAlva tool, which creates a unique avatar of the consumer through either asking them a few questions, which we call self-selection, or through taking 2 pictures of them and then generating an avatar from their silhouette. The generated avatar is reasonably accurate and will be able to fit that consumer into the right size. At this point, we are not trying to achieve scanner levels of accuracy down to the millimeter, but we are trying to look at mass trends for each area of the body. And to achieve this, each avatar needs to have common measurement points and measurement methodology. We want to ensure that when we are analyzing a shoulder width measurement, for example, that we are confident that all shoulder widths are measured the same way. This can be done by having consistent vertices mapped to specific key points on the body. Then, we can map these avatars directly to the control, the sizing stand. Here you can see an overlay of the consumer's body to determine the correct size recommendation, while we can compare apples to apples the measurements and shape differences of the consumer to the sizing standard. Now imagine having millions of these consumer avatars to feed an analytics engine to determine where and how to improve your brand sizing in the future. Whether that be tweaking the current sizing standards and extending the size range, or unearthing new sizing categories and product opportunities, or simply predicting sizing allocation much more objectively, all of these will have a sizable impact on your top and bottom line. The key to success in implementing sizing AI tools is to capture actionable data, which you can use to incrementally and constantly improve your offerings. So to conclude, there's a lot of hype about AI in the news and within the industry. It's important to understand the difference between generative AI and traditional AI. Generative AI is creative and it has its uses, and it will become more and more used in the consumer-facing side in the future. It's useful at this moment for ideation or in tasks where there's less rules and regulations, and becomes very dangerous when used in things where its creativity is unappreciated, like in virtual try-ons, where you need to show what you're actually selling. When talking about sizing, we are talking about traditional AI. And for traditional AI to work, it needs to be in a holistic, systematic approach. One cannot think that implementing some sizing AI tool will miraculously solve the returns issue, just like one cannot patch a deep wound with a Band-Aid. If you, as a brand, want to be able to leverage AI to improve your sell-through, reduce your returns and excess inventory, then you have to start by looking under the hood and address the root cause of your issues, which is sizing inconsistency. Thank you very much for listening, and thanks again to the ASBCI for the opportunity. Please contact us if you want to learn more and some of the new tech that we're working on. Goodbye.